The absolute lack of news about Path of Exile 2 is indeed painful, and the gap between the last Path of Exile 2 expansion and this next one will be the longest of all time. But fret not, I have gathered some of the greatest minds across the Path of Exile 2 space. Big brain Theorycrafters, Unhinged Yappers, Diablo 2 fanatics, deep delvers, temple enjoyers, speedrunners, literal film directors, the best troll around, and even historic tourists to provide feedback to grinding your games and entertainment for all of you during this wide gulf between updates. We know from Grinding Your Game's own mouth that this next patch 0.5 is supposed to be massive, so let's hope some of this feedback is addressed and some of these changes are added to Path of Exile 2, the game we all love to love and hate. Hit the like button now to spread this video to more exiles, subscribe to my channel to see more videos just like this, and make sure to go and check out all the creators in this video. I really tried to highlight a variety of people here, including a lot of up-and-comers in the Path of Exile 2 content creation space. Without further ado, let us begin.
Halcyonish here. The biggest issue I see with Path of Exile 2 right now is the lack of a scaling mechanic. I'm thinking of one like that rhymes with bell, tell, shelf, maybe starts with a D. I'm sure I'll think of it. But otherwise, I think they really need some endgame bosses, like more pinnacle bosses, that we can really motivate ourselves to push our builds towards. Because right now, once you beat the Arbiter of Ash, you feel like you've kind of finished the content, and I would love if there was more to explore.
An extremely thoughtful idea from the Queen of Delve, and something I really reckon we might see in 0.5, given it is the endgame overhaul.
Do you know what Path of Exile needs? Smaller maps. I don't even know how to get out of this. I don't even know what exit is. I don't know where to go. It doesn't need to be this long. It doesn't need to be this long.
I don't know, Frosty. I think your favorite game, Diablo 4, does it right. Maybe Path of Exile 2 should have an open world map that you don't walk through, you have a mount for. Screw just Roas. I want horses, rhinos, more dinosaurs. I think the maps could be bigger. That was a joke, by the way.
One of the biggest problems that I see with Path of Exile 2 right now is the gear power problem. I've discussed this at length on my channel. I think that a lot of the issues revolve around those gem level modifiers. They are just a bit too excessive. +7 gem levels at the top end, even +5 from an essence is just a bit too much. I'd like to see them remove some of that power from gear and place it into other sources of character power. For example, the passive tree needs a lot of work, it needs to be more interesting, and it needs to be more rewarding when you actually do level up and spend points into the tree.
Dreamcore and I are on the same wavelength, as you'll see later in the video.
Oh, good. We're still in the try video. Well, look, man, since everyone else is likely focusing on endgame, I suppose I'll take it amongst myself to stand up for the casuals, if you will. If you want new players to experience your game and to be out here gambling, crafting, and learning how to craft, then you need to make drops more accessible. Simply put, you need to hand out more currency for early to mid-game and certainly well before endgame so that players actually have an opportunity to learn through experimentation and practice with the crafting system on their way to endgame. As a recently converted hardcore solo self-found player specifically, finding roughly 10 to 20 exiles through the entirety of the campaign basically gives you almost no chance to craft, and instead you're fully relying on RNG to bless you with an item drop or provide an upgrade from a merchant, which just feels terrible. Listen, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a secret. Campaign, endgame, the RNG for drops in Path of Exile 2 absolutely sucks. GGG, do us all a favor, turn up that dial a notch, would you? Thank you.
I have nothing else to say besides absolute cinema. I had a smile on my face the entire time I watched that clip, during the first viewing, during editing, and every subsequent time after that.
In 0.3, crafting was in a really good spot and it was accessible for the majority of the player base, for casual players and for gamer dads. But in 0.4, with the removal of the homogenizing omen, crafting is no longer like that. And yes, you can do many simple crafts, but the true deterministic crafting is locked behind very expensive omens, and you need several of them, like we are talking Omen of Whittling, Dextral Erasure, things like that. Those omens are really expensive and rare, and the normal player is not using them. They drop, you get them, and you sell them to buy an item that is already crafted by somebody else. Why do these omens exist if the majority of the player base is not engaging with them? So my feedback is simple: or make the omens more common so that we get more of them, or rework the crafting system at that point because the normal player is not going to have access to this. Or introduce something to replace the homogenizing omen.
Okay, I know this is a Path of Exile 2 video, but who is the guy in the background on the poster in Jazzarus's video? Was that the guy from the Ghost movie that's making the sculpture? And all right, we'll just move on. But if you know who that is, let me know in the comments below.
The biggest issue that I personally see in PoE2 right now is player retention. For most players, engagement drops around the 4 to 5 week mark, I would say, not because the league is bad, but because PoE2 still doesn't have the long-term depth or volume of content the PoE1 has, obviously. With the leagues on a 4-month cycle, players hit that point and then don't really have a reason to stay engaged until the next league. Some switch to hardcore or private leagues, some play other games, and some just wait. Personally, even though I would love it, I don't think that shorter leagues is the solution right now. 4 months works pretty well for a lot of players, and GG actually needs that time. Instead, PoE2 would benefit from more happening within a single league. For example, rotating mid-league focus on existing mechanics, underwhelming ones, like empowering rogue exiles or wisps for a month, or even dropping something bigger like a new ascendancy mid-league to test and iterate on. That kind of an approach gives the player something to look forward to each and every month, while letting GG experiment without committing everything to a full league launch.
I disagree with Scorpius, and you can see why in my very long react to his awesome video on this exact problem.
Hello, people of YouTube and the YouTube sphere and Talkative Tries channel. This is me. Hello. You asked me what my biggest feedback is when it comes to PoE2 and the future of PoE2, and my biggest feedback when it comes to PoE2. And I have to say, after the game being out for over a year now into early access, I personally still have to say, for me, it is game performance. I really need and I want the game to perform well on my computer. That is my baseline for judging any game on how good it is, and I think there is still ways to go. This game is amazing. We have an insane vibe, we have insane designs, everything about the game, how the game feels to play, and everything related to that is just amazing. I just want better performance on my computer. I want more frames, I don't want random crashes, I want the game to feel smooth while playing. That is, for me, the baseline to any game, and I think that would be what I really wish the most for PoE2 in the future. Yes, that's it. Bye.
Absolutely based. Dead Rabbit is right, but how in the world did he not reference his cats the entire video? Ridiculous.
The biggest problems with Path of Exile 2 right now. I mean, I could name a ton off the top of my head, such as balance issues, bug problems, performance issues. All of those things are definitely on the top of the list, but I know that Grinding Gear Games will fix those as the game goes on and they add more content. But one thing I am concerned about, and potentially could be the downfall of the game, is going to be new player onboarding, because that is a problem that Path of Exile 1 struggles with, and part of the reason why Path of Exile 2 even exists. But I think there are ways that they can approach this that they've already done in the game right now. For example, with skill gems, they have those little videos talking about every single skill and showing you actually how to use them. I think that could be something that could be implemented for a lot more things, such as maybe crafting currency, showing you how to use each currency and explaining why you need to use them. Things like onboarding for the new league mechanics, actually having quests for you to show you how to do things. Those are all things that I think are a step in the right direction, and I'd love for them to implement that into more areas of the game right now.
Okay, the members of the Path to Exile podcast so far have based suggestion after suggestion. Totally agree with me, so here, let's see what Cal has to add.
Hey Trey, one system I feel is long overdue for an overhaul is the runes. I think in late game, runes feel amazing, but during the campaign and the early stages of endgame, there is a lot of friction with runes, especially in solo self-found. Runes are supposed to be the replacement for the crafting bench, an easy way to customize the stats. In PoE1, you're able to frequently use the crafting bench to help round out resistances or solve things like mana issues. And this gets a lot of use during the campaign. In PoE2, the RNG of runes makes it to where you rarely see the rune you want to put into your gear. Also, given the frequency you replace gear, the moment you slam an Artificer Orb and a Lightning Res Rune into a piece of gear, you're likely to find something better in a few levels. I think the solution is easy here. Add Artificer Orbs to vendors, and during the campaign have blank runes. Blank runes are a system already in the game from quests. They turn into any of the primary runes people want to use while leveling. Then adding Artificer Orbs to vendors will make us able to easily socket our gear more.
Now that is an interesting suggestion. If blank runes drop only during the campaign, would that mean people would go back to farm the campaign for those blank runes? Regardless, I think it's an interesting one, and it's something that I might like to see. Maybe it's a seeded drop that can only occur once per character per account a certain number of times or something like that, but I like the idea. It's a good, unique idea. I reached out to Jorgen, and he said I could ask him anything about Path of Exile 2, so I asked him for 1 minute of feedback on this game, and he gave me 3.
Welcome back, everyone, and I'm back in like 3 days, and Try reached out to me and asked me some things that I would like to see in at least the next patch. Now, we know that 0.5 is probably going to be a really good balance passover, and that's obviously off the back of 0.4. The currency market being a bit washed and inflated due to the overdrop rated divs and things like that. But avoid of that stuff. That's, you know, the given stuff that'll likely come with the game as it develops. Obviously, we're not going to focus on like new content either, because that stuff still hasn't come out. So you can't really critique something that hasn't come yet. The things that stick out to me though, are things like the life cap rate. So or life cap or life pool. For example. So a couple of suggestions here just on some of the issues. You compare energy shield to life, and there's just a vast differential between the amount of energy shield that you can easily scale and be able to take into the end game versus the amount of life. Now, there's obviously caveats to this with Blood Mage and things like that, where you can scale a lot of life, but I'm talking about those armor-based characters being warriors and soon to be marauders, and even things like Templar, when it gets added to the game, arguably is going to be one of my favorite classes. One of the biggest issues is while you can now scale armor, you can't really scale life very simplistically. And that's why people generally go the ES or ES hybrid route, because that's just far, far superior. It'd be really good to see GGG address this. And I think one way that you could do this would be have a percentage scale of your armor also scale up your life. So there's flat nodes. One of the biggest issues is while strength does scale life, it doesn't scale life at the crazy rate that you have accessibility to ES on the tree. Even if we talk about evasion, now evasion would be comparative to armor, and ES, while comparative to armor, is essentially a supplement for life-based builds, right? So my thing here is life needs a big rethink around how we do this on warrior-based characters, gladiator when that comes in, all that sort of stuff. Because those builds are going to be life-based, and without a better life pool scale, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I've always stuck by the optimum amount of life in PoE1 was about 4,500 to about 5,500 as the average mean life pool. And with the endgame being what it is, very similar to PoE1, realistically that should more or less scale exactly the same from a life pool scenario, considering armor now scales to that degree now anyway. Anyway, that'd be one that I'd really like to see looked at. And obviously the other one is skill wind-up. So, for example, rolling slam, it's just too slow to take it into the end game to make it workable. And it once was good, and then they nerfed it. I think having required times that can't be adjusted from cooldown reduction or things like that is just not very good. It doesn't feel good from being a melee player, from a melee player standpoint. And the other side of this is then the, I guess, the dual hand, I guess, not handicap, but the disadvantage of running dual wield needs to be addressed as well, because essentially running dual maces feels like that, you know, you're playing like a sloth, and it's just not an overall good feel. These would be 2 of the things, or 3 of the things that I think GGG should look at and should prioritize as one of their items when they do introduce more melee classes, things like swords and axes into the game. These will definitely need to be things to address, because you're going to be looking at builds that require a lot more speed, more so than wind up and big hits. So that'd be my take. But yeah, I'll leave it to the next person to go through their points.
Oh, you can't steal the segue from me, Jorgen.
But yeah, I'll leave it to the next person to go through their points.
Bro.
What I want to see most out of PoE2 is more build diversity, more builds, right? I think that starts with getting life in a good spot, so you can do life builds. I think getting uniques in a good spot. Just things to enable more builds, man. That's what I think makes PoE great, is the crazy builds you can do, and I'd love to do even more of them. So hopefully that's something that's coming down the pipe soon.
Life on the Tree, absolute classic from a hardcore enjoyer, and we're going from one hardcore enjoyer to another.
This is a search bar. Now I bet a few of you have seen this once or twice while searching for things. Searching for things has never been easier these days. You could search for the best PoE2 build right here. And you could even search for that perfect someone for the night and beyond right over here. In Path of Exile 2, you can search for all kinds of stuff, like items in your stash, to passive points on the passive tree. But right now, we desperately need search functionality in the Infinite Atlas. Being able to search for all my Mire maps and spend my whole weekend doing Mire is something that I'm being robbed of right now. So please, GGG, give us search functionality on the Atlas. If this is implemented, I promise to never bring up Life on the Tree ever again.
Okay, number one, it's a battle of the productions between Blaze and Young Wydock. Number two, appreciate the Shrek reference inside the video. Number three, Blaze, this suggestion assumes that the Infinite Atlas is here to stay. Will it be staying in 0.5? If we could get any Grinding Your Games leaks in the comments below, or even in this video. No, it's not happening. That would be pretty cool.
What do I want to see changed the most in Path of Exile 2? I would say I'm part of the MAGA coalition. We gotta make Ascendancies great again. Please, Grinding Gear Games, give us Ascendancies that matter, please. It's important, especially in Path of Exile 2. Other than that, please revisit your philosophy on crafting. I really don't see anything wrong with looking up what mods can roll on an item, the weighting, how to block mods from rolling. I think that's great. I think that's what makes Path of Exile 1 so amazing. That's my 2 cents.
Now my video is going to be flagged as a political one. But I suppose it's worth it because I agree. Make Ascendancies great again. If I had the production quality of Young Wydock, I'd probably go make a hat that says that. Or Photoshop it on my head.
Grinding Gear Games, we need some sort of multiplicative scaling vector outside of plus gem levels. It's affecting melee, minions, spells, projectiles, you name it. And if you don't have it on your amulet or your weapon, the item's probably trash.
Nice and concise. I like it, Gav.
Hi again, Try. Thanks again for including me on this one, though I'll be honest, the first thing that came to mind you actually made a video on recently, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to double down on this suggestion. GGG, I really think you should have a death log in your game. I think I even mentioned this to you in my previous submission to this series, but yeah, I think the devs have acknowledged how useful something like this would be in the game, and I'm not a game dev, so I don't know how difficult it would be to implement into Path of Exile 2, but one of my main points of frustration is dying quickly without knowing what the cause is. You know, it feels very uninteractable if I had to describe it. I love the ability to see a succinct breakdown of the damage types, the numbers, the sources, etc. of the last few seconds of a given character death. So yeah, I mean, that's my suggestion. I've seen combat logs done well in other games, even as far back as Vanilla WoW, which was 20 years ago. I know it's a different genre of game, but come on, GGG, make it happen.
I would absolutely love this as well. However, it really sounds like it's going to be incredibly difficult to implement from the developer perspective. I know that you mentioned you're not a game dev, I'm not a game dev. We see it in other games and we think you should be able to put it in the game, Grinding Your Games. But from what I've heard from some devs, the back-end calculations that occur in Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2 make this nigh on impossible. However, that doesn't mean I don't want it in the game.
So regardless of what type of player you are, most of you will probably agree the temple is way too extreme at the top end for both the rewards and the time investment required to get there. So why not make it smaller? That would help solve that issue on both ends of the spectrum. It's currently a 9x9 square, why not make it 8x8 or 7x7? And it would require almost no resources on GGG's part to do that. Another potentially great way to reduce the rewards at the top end would be to change the maximum tier of room from 3 to 2, as currently there's no fundamental difference between a tier 1 and a tier 2 room other than how much those rooms buff other rooms, so we can reduce those numbers as well as make rooms easier to upgrade with medallions or by conventional means. On the same topic of medallions, they are a great candidate for itemization. Imagine being able to buy Spy Master medallions or Lock medallions and what that would mean for shortening the difficulty of you making your own temple and maintaining it, not to mention the smoothing out of the economy more broadly. So that's just a few ideas I have for the temple moving forward. Let me know what you think.
I actually agree with the Blaster Snoobe himself on every point here with the temple. I think it's going core in 0.5. I think all these suggestions would be a W from Grinding Gear Games when they put it into the game as core. I want to add one of my own too. I think you should be able to find pre-built temples on your Atlas map. They could be different seeds. Some could be Giga Juice temples. Some could be absolute crap temples like the ones that I've built, but make them findable on the Atlas map. Maybe you could even itemize and sell them.
I'm Cyclone, and I believe that Path of Exile's biggest issue right now is its difficulty/survivability identity. Ignoring the life versus energy issue, there's an even more fundamental one. From the very beginning, the game teaches the player to build survivability. If you die, the boss resets, all enemies respawn, and you need to travel from the last checkpoint. In the endgame, it is further reinforced. You lose XP and a map portal whenever you die, having to run a near empty map if you lose all portals. And even if investing crazy into survivability, a single moment of carelessness, of looking away, or sprinting slightly too long can still kill you, and that at the hand of white enemies. And finally, if you get to the Arbiter, the game punishes you for building tanky, cause no matter how tanky you are, most of the abilities will still one-shot you, and now you don't have the damage to kill the Arbiter fast enough before the next one-shot.
I hear what Cyclone is saying. PoE2 has a couple of identity crises. All right, let's see what this next dude is going to say.
Hi everyone, my name's Crimson Casts, and I'm a PoE2 speedrunner and speedrun commentator. And what I think is the biggest problem in Path of Exile 2 right now is itemization, and in particular, item affixes. If you take a look at items that can exist during the campaign, it's actually the case that some flat damage modifiers, like lightning damage on this item level 17 varnished crossbow, do as much damage as the item base itself. And what that means is if you win your Exalt slams, you can have 3 or 4 times as much damage as someone who gets bad modifiers. What this means is that since that variance is so high, your choices, your combat positioning, your skill tree, your support gems matter a lot less because it's so dominated by the loot. For me as a speedrunner, this affects competitive balance in a way that I really don't like, where I think that it can result in someone who isn't the best player winning some of the races because RNG dominates player skill. So I really want GGG to buff item bases and nerf affixes so the total damage is the same, but the variance is less.
An absolute monster list of suggestions and points of feedback to Grinding Gear Games about Path of Exile 2. But you might be curious, what is my biggest point of feedback right now? Anybody who's been watching my second channel or my live streams as of late knows exactly what I'd like to see with Path of Exile 2 now. We have Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2, separate games, separate teams now. They should have as distinct an identity as possible. We don't need to go way into the end of a Dark Souls-like game for Path of Exile 2, something similar to No Rest for the Wicked. That's not what I'm asking for here. I'm asking for an experience in Path of Exile 2 that is more similar to the campaign experience on your first character, where combat actually matters. You need to dodge roll. You need to pay attention to what's going on your screen, and it doesn't turn into a one-click fiesta too quickly. The mode of progression is far too quick in Path of Exile 2 right now, and that is due to a variety of factors. It's also too swingy because almost all of your power is located in your gear. So if you get a GG item very quickly, you completely trivialize all the content in the game, and that is very hard to balance for Grinding Gear Games. They need to put more power in deterministic sources so that they can balance the game better, whether it's white mobs, yellow mobs, or bosses throughout the campaign and the end game. If I were to boil down my biggest point of feedback and suggestion to Grinding Gear Games, it's to go back to that OG vision, what we saw in 0.1 for Path of Exile 2. It's something that was critiqued by a lot of players at the time, but I think another, maybe quieter section of the player base really enjoyed the game that Path of Exile 2 was then and could have grown to be. But instead, they pushed it more into the Path of Exile 1 direction, and especially now, more than ever, that Path of Exile 1 has its own team, dedicated team, they should not become the same game. They were split out for a reason. They should have diverging paths, not converging paths. So I'd like to see Path of Exile 2 become more distinct and have combat be more meaningful, as the meme says. A massive shout out to all the creators who participated in this video, but you also have a chance to leave your comment below. What is the biggest point of feedback you have to grinding your games about Path of Exile 2 right now? What would you like to see in 0.5? Let me know in the comments below. And as I said before, make sure to go check out all these amazing creators. All of their channels will be in the description. I hope to see a little bump on all of them. And really, guys, thank you for the support. Both the creators, the audience watching this, and all you reactors looking for content before 0.5. I know you're there. I do. I appreciate you too. I hope you're watching this at least a day after it's released. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Or you could just watch one of these videos on screen right now. There's some Path of Exile 2 streams, some podcasts, or another commentary video for your viewing pleasure.